Welcome into another edition of This Week in UNC Baseball with head coach Scott Forbes. I'm Tommy Ashley, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. I wanted to start a little differently today. A lot of news around North Carolina football program and around college football about Nico Emiliave, the Tennessee quarterback. I don't know if you follow that story, but I wanted to ask you an NIL question as a head coach at a major university. If a player came to you that you really wanted with some insane demands of what they expected out of NIL, how does Scott Forbes handle that? He's good, and he makes your team better.
Yeah, I haven't. Did you ask if he came to us out of the portal?
So say it could be one of your own players. It could be somebody you wanted out of the portal. Anybody.
Yeah, I think those two conversations for me would be different. Obviously, football and basketball are at a different level financially. It is in baseball quite a bit, and it's a lot bigger than people think. And we have played a lot of teams that have a lot of it. However, to answer that question, I think when it's your current players, you have to hope that that's not happening. Now, I can't relate to football, basketball because we're baseball. I have to trust that we have great kids, great parents that value being at UNC, are comfortable with the culture, know that how they're going to be treated, know what's here for them to get better, as well as get an unbelievable degree. So that conversation would be harder for me, and it probably wouldn't go well. Now, off the portal, it's a different animal right now because if a young man is on the portal and he's looking at different schools, for us, if the number one factor is NIL and money, that is going to be a situation where we're going to go another direction. I'm also not, I'm smart enough to know, not that I'm smart, but it is a factor for some families, and I understand that. So for us, it's more, okay, what is most important? Knowing that scholarship and NIL, they do matter. Can we compete? Can we offer a package competitively? We're not going to be the ones that offer the most, but maybe we can find another niche to get the young man here. But, man, I don't envy those conversations in that situation. So it's a different world for sure. And I'm hoping that things get to where the court case endure, they get their arms wrapped around it, and it is fair market, and it's like it should be. Name, image, and likeness, in my opinion, should be, what can you make off your name, image, and likeness? But it has been quite a head spinner and whirlwind for all head coaches, which is why you're seeing the general managers helping these head coaches. But man, Tommy, it is definitely a different world for sure.
It is, and it's insane. And I don't see how you guys deal with it, but I caught you off guard with the question, but I wanted to get the unvarnished. Yeah.
It's a lot harder.
I know y'all deal with it a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot harder, just to be bluntly honest, than it used to be. And you have to really have a great staff as a head coach, in my opinion. Then you have to be able to separate when you walk out on that field, not hold it against any of your current players, and just enjoy being around them and understand the time is fast and they're not here that long, and try to be centered and focus on helping them have great lives while balancing the part of your brain that knows, hey, the transfer portal is going to open right when we're in our postseason, and how we're going to handle it, what do we need, and how we're going to put this team together. So it is challenging for sure.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a baseball question then, specifically. Matty Mateus obviously out for a while. How do you adapt on the fly? Last year you had Knapp go down early, and then Folger goes down. Matty goes down. Percival's got some issues as well. But how do you adapt and decide, okay, this guy might not have been a guy that was going to pitch a lot, but now he has to? Mm-hmm. How do those conversations go, and how do you know who's ready to step into that role?
Yeah, well, I have to trust Coach Allen, Coach Gaines if it's a pitcher, trust Coach Jackson and Coach Wierzbicki if it's a position player. As far as they're with him in the cages the most, they're with him in the bullpen the most. I'm on the field the most, and I'm at both. Obviously, I take a lot of pride in paying a lot of attention to what every player is doing. But to answer your first question is when you have an injury like that, you got to meet it head on. You have to talk to your team about it. And you have a ton of compassion for the player first that's had the injury. Because if you put yourself in his position, that's tough. Knapp's position, any player's position, even if they're not playing a lot, as soon as they know that, hey, potentially my season's over, that's a hard pill to swallow, and you want to support them and help them. So I explained to our team that's the top priority. And number two, the season is going to keep coming at us. Nobody's going to feel sorry for us. The world keeps turning, as my dad used to always tell me when something negative happened. You got to put one foot in front of the other. If anything, we have to make us closer, be more unified, and that's why we have depth. Guys that maybe haven't pitched as much are going to get more opportunities, and I know that they're ready for those opportunities because they've been working. They're at North Carolina for a reason. They've got the ability, and then some guys that maybe were in a little bit lower. I don't know if I want to use the word lower, but maybe a setup role or a head role. Now they're going to have to move into a role like Maddie had, where almost every single time you're going to pitch when the game's close. But I am a firm believer in not making excuses. Everybody has injuries. Everybody has team adversity during the season. So you have to deal with it and try to be positive and take something from it and move on.
So when you have a guy like Lee Sowers, who, one thing I noticed about him, he was always the first out of the dugout. He was always the first at the edge, even when he wasn't playing. And I was wondering, God, this guy's got a great attitude, and he's not getting a chance. At what point, when somebody's practicing, playing hard in practice, doing all those things, do you decide that they've reached the threshold that, okay, I trust them enough to go into the game, whether it's Sowers or Sawyer Black earlier or Perry or any of those guys that weren't in your sort of solid 8, I guess, if we want to say that. How does a guy like Sowers work his way in without having done it on the field before he gets the opportunity?
Yeah. Well, you did point something out that's very important in our program, and that is a standard here. Part of our culture is your attitude is not an option. So you have to learn. I also don't want kids to fake it. I want them to learn that, hey, how important it is to be a great teammate and how powerful it is when you're pulling for your teammates, because they're also going to end up pulling for you. But you do have to separate. You're never going to put anybody in the lineup just because they're a great teammate. You have to put the best players on the field in the current time to give your team the best chance to win. That's a coach's job before the game, during the game. But you pay attention. You watch BP every single day. We have early work. We practice, and I remind our guys, there's no such thing as a gamer. Gamers are phenomenal practice players, like the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants, or who you just go on and on and on. So you pay attention. You look at, is the kid getting stronger? Is he committed in the weight room? And obviously the attitude factor. Like if he's doing all those other things and his attitude stinks, definitely not going to put him in. You're digging your own grave if that's the case. But if there's a good combination, because there is power in knowing that your teammates are going to pull for you, and I feel like we have a bunch of those guys. And Lee had been showing in BP versus, we can simulate as much as we can with these machines. You can get that thing up to 95. You can use the eye pitch. You can mix. He had just been having really good quality at bats in those simulations, and he had looked really good in the box during BP. And we felt like after Sawyer Black, had to have hamate surgery, that he at the time had shown that he deserved that opportunity.
Yeah, and he certainly took advantage of it. It was a great at bat, culminating in the game-winning hit there. Grace sent me some questions, so I wanted to ask a couple from her, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We talk about Jake Knapp and his ability to do it on the field. What has he meant for your program, just being Jake Knapp?
It's been so neat to watch, to go back to the conversations I remember having with Jake when he was deciding whether or not to come to UNC or sign professionally out of Walters State. I remember I was just riding. I love to ride my bike when I do get to go to Topsail, which is not very often. just peaceful. And in the summertime, I'm going to be on my phone trying to put your team together. The season's over. But I remember talking to Jake and just listening to him, but also trying to not necessarily convince him, but make him understand why I felt like coming to UNC would benefit him, even his professional career. Pretty unsure, new situation, tiptoed a little bit early on around, and then he settled in 23. And then after that season, the fall, I really started to see him emerge as a leader. And I could see the other guys looking to Jake for a lot of different things. He became, I named 2 captains for the first time. He was one of them. It was a unanimous decision by the team, and then unanimous decision by his coaches. And then to see him have the injury. And, as the first pitch banquet, obviously he didn't like what I told him, but I knew that that's what he needed to hear, as harsh as it was. And then for him to take that the right way, come back the next day, and spend that entire season just locked in. Obviously, he was with us. He sat right beside me every single game, but he also worked. After that surgery, he did all of his rehab at a high level. He worked hard in the weight room. He got himself in the best shape he's ever been in, so he could maybe move up his return from full Tommy John a little bit earlier, which he wanted to do. And he had discussed that with the doctor because he was at the point where my age is older and I want to be ready for opening day. And then just to see him mature too as just a human being, to do well academically, to get in a grad certificate. It's just been awesome, honestly. It's one of those things. Well, okay, that takes away sometimes what we just talked about, dealing with the NIL, dealing with this, dealing with transfer portal. Well, here's a kid that NIL helped him a little bit, and he was able to come back, and he has helped UNC baseball tremendously.
Yeah, he's been an absolute stud for you, especially on Friday nights.
Yeah.
Any other leaders have emerged? I mean, obviously Jackson and Knapp are your captains. You're voted on captains, but who's jumped up for you?
I would have to say, Stokely, Hunter Stokely, Madera. They've been tremendous. Kyle Percival's been an older guy for us that guys look to. Lead by example guys. Aiden Houck, we give a leadership award every week. We just go through, we have weekly awards, QAB winner, RBI winner, whip winner, off the bench, things like that. And I would say Aiden as well. Aiden is a leader by example. He's a very quiet person. But I think we have a bunch of them. That's where I've been really fortunate this year. I think it's a team that leads themselves. I don't have to say much during a game. I don't have to, hey, let's get it going, things like that. They're doing that themselves. I think they hold each other accountable. We have older players that, it's neat too to see guys that aren't playing that are finding ways to lead. And we have some of those as well, which is very important.
A couple more questions for you. It is game day, so Coach Forbes has to get ready for a game. Not that he needs to be spending time with Inside Carolina, but I appreciate that you do. How many times, here's an interesting question. I don't want to get you in trouble, though. How many times when you submit balls and strikes to the ACC or however y'all handle that, were you actually right? Or what's the percentage when you were actually wrong, but you thought you were right in those types?
We're never wrong. Coaches are never wrong. No, I'm kidding.
I was shocked looking at
umpires are never right. No, I'm just now with the data, it's hard to be wrong when you submit the strike zone. I mean, we have access to the TrackMan data that the umpires get as well. And for me, I do believe that relationships are important. The older I get, I think you just talk to umpires. You have to talk to them professionally and respectfully. You have to stand your ground and you have to fight for your players. But there's a way to do it, in my opinion, a way not to do it. But at the end of the day, the level of college baseball we're playing, the expectations need to be high for everybody. And we have to have 90% or better, in my opinion, to be where we want to be as a league, because that's basically what the SEC is doing. So that's my big thing. Like, if guys are pretty consistent, if they're above 90%, we'd like to get in that 93, 94, 95%, but they're human. They're going to make mistakes. So really when you submit it, you're not submitting it unless you feel really strongly like this was just bad. This was a bad day. It's got to be better. Can't happen in games like this at this level. And Troy Fullwood, who leads our umpires, he respects that. And it's important that they work hard and they're held accountable just like we are.
What about Elon? Can I ask you about that? You were as fired up as I've ever seen you at Elon. Can I not ask you about that? Yeah.
He was safe. I mean, he was right there in front of my face. I was
definitely safe.
I was probably mad at myself because there was no replay. And I thought it was a big moment. I felt like the umpire didn't allow the play to develop, made the call too fast. I think that's very important when there's a close play. You got to look at it and let it, and then make the call. But I felt like that was a time to fight for Kane Kepley, so I did it and I moved on.
Yeah, Kepley was hot too, and I agree. We were standing down on the fence, and he was clearly safe. But anyway, I didn't want to put you on the spot there. Let me ask you
sometimes you get fired up. Yeah, you gotta. As I preach to the players, when you get hot or you feel it rising, that's when you got to learn to control it the most, because that's when it's most important. So you got to work on that. But I felt like, man, that was just a really bad call, a really important situation. I had a gut. The game was going to be hard. It was going to be close. It was one of those games, and I was just upset that we got a guy that's going to be at third base with less than 2, and those guys usually score. So that's what made me most upset. But he slid in the second, and he caught him safe at the end. So maybe it helped a little bit.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, but nobody can ever doubt that you fight for your guys for sure. And you were right, 100% right then. Last fun question before I let you get out of here. I asked you about BP and who was going to hit the most home runs. If you and the coaching staff took BP, well, if y'all have a foursome at Finley, you, Howell, Gaines, where's Bicky? Who's winning?
Weir's not even close, unfortunately. I have to give him that credit, but he's the golfer of the group. Dave Arendas is probably behind him as the second best, but Coach Weir's, I'm wondering sometime, is he playing at, from 6 a.m. to 9? Is he getting out on Finley? Does he go at night or is he just one of those guys that's good, but he's good. When I say good, like he can play with anybody. But my goal when I play with Coach Weir's is to get in his head as much as I can.
That would be fun to see. Yeah. Those ones that are just good are tough to deal with.
He's good.
Coach Forbes, I appreciate it. I know I asked you some questions and maybe off the beaten path a little bit, but you always a pleasure to talk to, especially on a game day. I know it's important for us to do this, but it's also great that you do it with us. So appreciate it.
Y'all bring so much attention to our program, and we're glad to do it. We've got a big week ahead. Hopefully we'll have a big turnout tonight. Charlotte's good. They've been playing really well. And then we'll have a tough stretch where we're on the road back-to-back weekends, and got exams coming up. So excited about tonight, though, back at home and get to see Robert Woodard. Love seeing him. Be nice to him before the game and after the game.
Who's throwing for you?
Cam Seagraves is starting today.
Nice. And then same rotation on the weekend?
Yes, sir. Yep. Same rotation. Friday, Saturday, Friday Knapp, Saturday Houck, Sunday DeCaro.
Works. We'll see you tonight. Appreciate it, Scott.
Look forward to it. Thanks for having me. Y'all have a great rest of your week and a great Easter.
Absolutely.
All right.
Shout out to head coach Scott Forbes for joining us. Game day. Carolina plays Charlotte. If you're watching this on Tuesday at 6 o'clock in Boshammer Stadium. So he's got quite a lot to do. And he's gracious enough with his time to talk to Inside Carolina, talk to me, and talk to you guys, the fans that watch these shows and pay attention to Carolina baseball. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt for being our sponsor. Of course, you can go to Franklin Street or you can go to johnnytshirt.com, but you can get all the best gear for North Carolina athletics. They've got shirts for every occasion, for every school at the university. But you can also get that baseball swag and get stickers and hats and hoodies if you still need a hoodie or a sweatshirt, but T-shirts and baseball jerseys, of course. Johnny T-Shirt, great sponsors of Inside Carolina, great sponsors of these shows, great friends of Inside Carolina, great friends of Inside Carolina's subscribers, and they give you 10% off your order. If you go to the premium boards, get that 10% off. Take it to Johnny T-Shirt either online or in person. Tell them I sent you and here's the code. They'll give you 10%. Can't beat free money. Again, thanks to Scott Forbes. It's been This Week in UNC Baseball. Today's April 15th.